Good morning, everyone. Another episode of the Focus Daily Show. We're back. Today, we're going to speak about the Louisiana Purchase. Before we begin, let's begin this show like we always begin, with honor and respect for our sponsor. This show is being brought to you by the Most High and His Son, Jesus Christ. It's through them that I have been sent to offer this chance for redemption and grace. Through this truth, lost souls can be saved. Okay, let's get to it. So, the last time we officially spoke, we spoke about Napoleon and when he invaded Southern America in the Texas area, and he discovered the real land of Egypt. The real land of Egypt. Not the Disneyland theme park on the other side of the world. See, when they came and found that gold, not only did they steal the gold, they stole the pyramids themselves and dispersed parts of them all around the world. But while Napoleon was exploring west under the charter of the Pope in Rome, he also was searching out for indigenous camps and indigenous towns or territories or forts to help kind of like curb the resistance against their conquering of the land. So during this, he came across Louisiana. And we're going to talk a little bit about Louisiana. Pulled up a couple of things. But just to point out what I'm saying, here go an article from, let me make sure y'all can see this. All right, Steph. Here go an article from the Louisiana State Museum online exhibits. And I just want to point out that even though this was early 1800s, 1803 to be precise, there was still a very affluent, successful, flourishing indigenous American community and lifestyles. But it was at this moment that we officially begin to fall from grace and lose sight of our Lord, God, the Most High, and His Son, Jesus Christ. So let me read a little bit of this. For the first 4 decades of the 19th century, blacks, both slaves and free, made up the majority of the New Orleans populace. Okay, by slaves and free is the indigenous blacks. Slaves would be, like we spoke of earlier, the blacks that was imported from other parts of the world. The, I can't even think of their word. Immigrants, that's what it is. Black immigrants from other parts of the world. So it was a flourishing community of indigenous people and also others. But my point is, this is in the early 1800s when they try to convince us that we were brought over here on slave ships. But anyway, in the early 1800s, blacks made up a majority of the New Orleans populace. In 1810, nearly 2/3 of all New Orleans was black. See that? By 1840, however, the percentage of African Americans in the Crescent City dropped to 2/5 and declined even further over 2 decades preceding the Civil War. Primarily because the whites moved into the city and more slaves was needed in the rural cotton field. You know, that's the PC version. Primarily because it was a slaughter. Napoleon's job was to clear the land and make way for this coming Virginia company. As the company began spreading towards the west, they sent out explorers like Lewis and Clark and Napoleon. to clear the way. Okay, let me read a little bit more of this other article from the Smithsonian magazine. The Louisiana Purchase nearly doubled the size of the United States, and the cost of 4 cents an acre was a breathtaking bargain. I bet it was, considering they slaughtered the indigenous people who truly held claim to the land. Okay. Understandably, Pierre Clement de Lassat was saddened by the unexpected turn of events. Having arrived in New Orleans from Paris with his wife and 3 daughters just 9 months earlier, in March 1803, the cultivated, worldly French functionary had expected to reign for 6 or 8 years as colonial prefect over the vast territory of Louisiana, which was to be France's North American empire. You know, this is where France stuck their hand in. The prospect has been all the more pleasing because the territory capital, New Orleans, had noted with approval with a city with a great deal of social life, elegance, and good breeding. So it was a great city when they already arrived. It's hard for people to understand due to the illustration of history that has been given to us by the company through their textbook manufacturers that work directly for the company. We will get into that a little later. But it was already people here. It was already the indigenous people here, people of dark olive tone complexion. They already had flourishing cities. They already had a flourishing culture, technology, inventions. Meanwhile, the rest of the world was living in third world status. Once they arrived over here to the city of gold, the land of milk and honey, El Dorado, and they seen all the greatness, immediately greed struck their heart. Okay, the prospects had been more pleasing because the territory capital, New Orleans, had noted with approval was a city with a great deal of social life, elegance, and good breeding. He also had liked the fact that the city had all sorts of masters, dancing, music, art, fencing, and even though there were no bookshops or libraries, according to them, books could be ordered from France. See, what's most important for them is to keep the big lie a secret. This land belonged to the Most High, and he blessed it to his chosen children. They were well aware of this during their discoveries. One of the things they discovered was this book, The Living Testimony of the Lord. And through studying that book, they realized what they actually had their hands on. But greed kept them moving forward. But also, let's get into about Napoleon. But also, before Lassat had learned to appreciate good gumbo and the relaxed Creole pace of life, Napoleon Bonaparte had abruptly decided to sell the territory to the United States. This left Lassat with little to do but officiate on a sunny December 20th, 1803. The French tricolor was lowered in New Orleans main square, the Placid Armes, and the American flag was raised. So, the Louisiana Purchase in a nutshell. You got to kind of like read in between the line, people. I'm gonna present their version of history, but I'm also going to intervene with the truth, with God's version of history. The history of America, the history of the indigenous people, the history of his chosen children, the history of the world. But as for today, that's it. So until the next time, y'all, Focus Daily.